Hi, my name's Amy Johnston, and this presentation is the case study um, for Carl, and I titled it What's Best for Carl. And the summary of the story is that Carl was a student, a third grade student, and he was in a school that shared administration between several other schools. The SPED teacher was new and followed the legacy of a SPED teacher that had been there for a long time. His classroom teacher was experienced, but obviously struggled reaching out for support when Carl's behavior increased. And I'm going to reflect on what could be done to help Carl with this, with his behavior. So, the first category, I want to talk about what I know, what I need to know, and what was the problem. So, what do I know? The SPED teacher was new and she was filling the shoes of an experienced teacher. Carl's parents were going through a divorce, and you could tell from the conversation between them that it was a difficult divorce. His behavior used to be met through a basic behavior plan, sort of. It sounds like it was kind of a just a make do plan. And now his behavior has increased and his IEP is not meeting his needs. And the last thing that I know is that administration is spread thin through the district due to funding issues. Things I need to know, I didn't know if Carl was receiving any counseling, especially to deal with his parents' issue. I didn't know what motivates Carl. Is he one that likes to spend time? Does he like rewards? Does he like positive notes home? That sort of thing. I wasn't sure if there was any para or aide support available for Carl's classroom. And then I also didn't know if Carl had any learning issues or if it was just a behavior IEP. So, to identify the problem, I know that he's on an IEP to address his behavior issues. I know it was 6 weeks into the school year when the classroom teacher felt like there was a big enough issue that she wanted Carl out of her room. And the building had to handle the situations, and the parents have their own issue that's going on right now. And the teacher was scared and frustrated. Category two, I think it's important that for the plan, there needs to be a determination made for what motivates Carl. I need to know for the second step of the plan, I would work with the classroom teacher, have the SPED teacher and the classroom teacher work to focus on a concern area. Maybe it is his physical aggression, something like that. And then work together to create a chart that monitors his behavior to try to improve it. I think they should gather baseline data and set a goal for his behavior after they have identified the concern. And then finally, they need to follow that plan for a good amount of time to see if improvements are happening in his behavior. The next category asks what's best for students, and I believe that it's best for students to remain in the general ed classroom unless they're a danger to themselves or others. And some examples from this case that support that is it doesn't appear that there was any intervention that took place. It just went from a general behavior IEP to 6 weeks later, it was out of control. So I'm not sure how long that had been going on necessarily, or if anything had been in place, but yanking him from the classroom should not be the first step. We do know that Carl's going through a difficult home transition, and it didn't sound like there was any social emotional support for him. So leaving the classroom and not having that support in place isn't really going to help fix the behavior. And also, if he's removed from the classroom, it doesn't sound like there's a lot of resources available to teach him his tier one core subjects. So then there'd be a lack of learning happening. When I was reading through this story, the first thing I felt was I felt sadness for Carl and that he didn't really have anyone that understood him or was trying to understand him. I imagine him feeling very alone and isolated. I actually did identify with the frustration of the teacher. I know what it feels like to be in a classroom and feel like you don't have any support and to just kind of make do until you're at your breaking point. So I understand and I identify with the teacher. And then the third thing is I wondered if this would be different if the new sped teacher had a mentor to kind of ask for guidance. The fact that the sped teacher didn't know that anything was a problem 6 weeks into the year means that there isn't a whole lot of communication going on between the sped teacher and classroom teachers. And I believe a mentor probably would have encouraged that. Unresolved issues. How is the behavior going to be tracked for improvement? The plan that they talked about a plan for removal from the classroom, but it never really addressed if there was a plan to track it and make the behaviors, the outbursts lessen. Also, we're not sure what it is that motivates him or how that's being used. And the last thing is that the unresolved issue of his social emotional well being, if there is counseling that could go on. So, in category 5, there's actually 3 areas that we're going to look at. The first one is component 1. How did you, as the educational leader, promote the academic success by enhancing instructional capacity? I believe that the district coordinator of special education, giving her the suggestion, the SPED teacher, the suggestion to create an intervention was great advice. And if he is being physically active toward the teacher, he absolutely does need to be removed from the room to protect the learning of others. The superintendent took time, even though it sounds like he's stretched very thin, to meet with the teacher and listened to her plan and supported her intervention plan and advised her then to set up a meeting to revise the IEP so that Carl's learning would be protected also. In component 2, the educational leader in this promoted the personal well-being of other students in the class by developing the plan for removal because that is not a safe place for other students to learn. Then also, when including the parents in the process for an IEP, it allowed them to understand the situation and the learning situation in the classroom and how it was detrimental to others. And then after the teacher presented a concern, they had an action put into place to fix that problem. Component 3, how do you as the school leader enhance instructional capacity? So he was not just removed as requested by the teacher of the general ed classroom, like she just wanted him taken out of the room, and instead they came up with a plan and they adjusted his IEP, which is the appropriate way to do it rather than just taking him from the room. The intervention plan was suggested as a way to meet his needs. Instead of a punishment, it was addressed as something Carl needed to be successful. And then lastly, there was a time made to meet with the SPED teacher and support was given to implement the plan. So those are ways that I believe that there was enhancing of instructional capacity. That concludes my presentation. I appreciate you taking time to listen and look forward to your feedback. Thanks.